Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the December Lebanon Plan Commission meeting. We have quite an agenda this evening, so we'll go ahead and get ourselves started with the roll call, please.
Dan Bayshore.
Here.
Denise Niblick. Here. Diane Scott is absent. Kevin Krulik.
Here.
Corey Coots.
Here.
Keith Campbell.
Here.
And Lori Gross. Here.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. And then I believe everyone received a copy of the minutes. If there's no questions, comments, concerns, I would entertain a motion on those.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify with an aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Those minutes are passed. One other kind of housekeeping item here is we do have our 2026 calendar. I believe everyone has a copy of that as well. If there are any comments, or I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve the 2026 Plan Commission calendar.
Got a motion to approve and a second from Keith. All those in favor, please signify with an aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. That does carry as well. We're not going to make Lori do all the hard work tonight, okay, guys? That is kind of all the housekeeping that I have. Under old business, I have no items, so we will move on to our new business items. First item on the docket is docket number 25-51, Parkview Hospital, and Mr. Bontrager.
Thank you, Mr. Coots. Parkview Health has submitted a development plan application for a hospital here in Lebanon. If they'll go ahead and pull the screen up for you, I'll kind of orient you to the location. We'll be getting our new aerials up here before too terrible long. So this is embarrassingly old since the field house isn't even there yet. But this is the site. It's overall about a 50-acre site located on the south side of the interstate, and it's two properties removed from the field house development. You'll kind of see where Enterprise Drive is going to extend south past the field house. It will actually meander a little bit southeasterly and kind of hit the southwest corner of the site and then run along the southern part of this property as you see here. So it will have access both from John Shaw Road that is on the west side of the property, but then Enterprise Drive will also run along the south side of the property. So that's where access will be provided. Again, I said this is about a 50-acre site overall, and I will go through some of the details of the plan here for you. So this gives you an idea of the overall site. You will see the hospital is contained in the northern half of the property. It is a 30-bed hospital along with significant medical office space, and it is a full-service hospital, so it'll have an emergency room, inpatient care, et cetera, et cetera. I'll let them go into more detail on exactly the operations they're talking about here, but this is a full-service hospital. And then they would have then two additional outlots that we would anticipate being additional medical-related uses. And I think there's a question already.
Did you say 30 room?
30 beds, yes. There's a typo in the staff report. I was corrected by a Parkview representative as well. So we had some information that conflicted it, but it is 30 beds, not 40 beds. And so there are two additional outlots that would be additional medical office or medical related complementary uses that we might anticipate out here. Again, you can kind of see here's the southern end of that proper Enterprise Drive would run through. There is also a secondary public road that runs kind of in an L shape through the site to provide access to the hospital and also to those additional medical office users that might locate on those outlots. So that's the overall site here. This is obviously a site where there's a lot of technical review happening right now. A lot of the utilities will be provided from the west from the fieldhouse site, and obviously transportation utilities coming from that location. Working through a lot of those technical issues from our technical advisory committee, but I will focus primarily on the planning related items. So the site is already zoned general business. Hospital is a permitted use within the general business zoning district. So we've got kind of the first check on the box there. This is also in the thoroughfare overlay district associated with Interstate 65, which has some additional requirements that we'll talk about as we go through this. So in terms of lot sizes, lot widths, lot frontages, setbacks, et cetera, we worked with the applicant and their designer and made sure that all the lot sizes and setbacks, et cetera, all have all been provided. In addition, the thoroughfare overlay district has a buffer that is required along the interstate of 30 feet, which has been provided. And then we also have additional buffers on the eastern and western property lines. To the east is actually right now zoned residential. And there is not a development that's proposed there, but it is on the market. To the west is the Hickory Junction 2 development. And actually a majority of this western property line adjacent to the development is a proposed residential use within that development. So they were required to have a commercial to residential buffer on both the western and eastern property lines, which have been provided also. So that's a quick high level of some of the site requirements from a setbacks, et cetera. We are working with them to just massage the parking calculations. As you may recall, last year we did maximum parking requirements, not minimum parking requirements. So again, the 40 bed to 30 bed changes the math on that a little bit. So we're working through them to massage that, make sure we got the proper numbers, and that'll be worked out appropriately once we finalize the site plan with them and before they would start construction. Walk through the overall site real quick. Next would be, I'll go through the landscaping. So there are requirements for both those buffers. As I had mentioned, you can see those buffer plantings on the north, east, and west property lines to provide that commercial to residential buffer, and then also the thoroughfare overlay buffer. In addition to that, we do have parking lot perimeter and interior landscaping, which you can see that they're showing, and they have met that requirement on those parking lots, both on the west side and the east side of the building. Due to the thoroughfare overlay district, there's also a building-based landscaping requirement. 75% of that building perimeter needs to be landscaped with a 5-foot landscape planting area. And you can kind of see these shaded areas. While this is not zoomed in enough to see the full details, but all these shaded areas are areas where they're proposing to do building-based landscaping. So they have additionally also met that building-based landscaping requirement. So after reviewing this, we have been able to verify that they do meet all those landscaping requirements associated with the general business zoning district and all the appropriate and applicable buffer yards. This does additionally show that commercial to residential buffer extending south along these proposed uses. Certainly, once these users come in, they will have their own development plan applications that they would have to submit to our office, where we will review those additionally to make sure they meet all the specific requirements for those uses as well. Next is the lighting plan, and I can't read those photometric numbers on there, so I'm sure you can't either. So you'll just have to believe me when I say that they do meet all of the photometric requirements. You can see where they've got the lighting plan, where they've got light poles stationed around the building and in the parking lots and on the roads. And they do meet all of the photometric requirements for foot candle measurements at property lines to make sure we don't have any light spillage on adjacent properties. So we have verified that both their light pole heights meet the standards, and then also those foot candle measurements are under the maximum at the property lines. Conceptual signage plan. This is not a final site plan, but they're showing us the typical types of signage what they will want to install on the site. We'll work with them to finalize that site plan before issuing any sign permits. There are some modifications will be made to some of the sizes, heights, et cetera, to make sure they meet the requirements. But this kind of gives you an idea what some of their entry monument signage at the top right here, some of what their entry monument signage might look like, and additional signage they use around the site to provide directional signage for people trying to enter the site and find their way to the appropriate entrance in the building. And so, again, I said this is all conceptual, but certainly before they would submit for any sign permits, we will finalize the sign plan and make sure it meets all the applicable requirements within this zoning district. And finally, this gives you an idea of the conceptual elevations for the building. I mentioned this is in a thoroughfare overlay district, so are there heightened architectural requirements for materials, et cetera. As you can see here, the darker brown color is all a brick material. So they more than meet the masonry requirement of the thoroughfare overlay district, and then also the 360-degree architecture requirement in the overlay district. You can see there's windows all the way around the building, additional architectural features. You can see entryways. So they have met all of the specific architectural requirements of the general business zoning district and the thoroughfare overlay district. This may see some minor modifications. They finalize the building footprints, et cetera, but this is a pretty good example at this point of what this building is going to look like. And then once they finalize those and submit for building permits, we'll verify that everything is still meeting of these standards. But at this time, they have met all of those requirements. So I think that kind of covers the high points of their plan. So finally, the staff recommendation and review of the development plan as presented. Staff finds compliance with the UDO requirements for the subject site and recommends approval of the development plan contingent on the following conditions. And that first would be that they adequately address any remaining TAC comments before applying for building permits, receive formal drainage approval, and then also finalize the sign plan as I discussed. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ben. Any questions from the commission for Ben?
Yes, I do have a question, but I don't know if it's for you or for the applicant more so. But I am repetitive in these, so you might see some eyes rolled. But my question would be, it's hard for me to tell for sure, like what the sidewalk plan, walking path plan might be. I couldn't tell. Is there going to be any kind of like atrium situation or anything where there's outdoor seating for, now that's pretty far in, I know it's a concept, but with a lot of the big development that's coming in, the walking paths and places to be outside, quality of life for employees and things is very important to keep in mind. So that's not a question, it's more of a statement, but.
Yeah, well, and I will talk more from the broader development perspective. They can talk maybe more within the hospital part of the site, but certainly all public roads within and or adjacent to this development will be required to have sidewalks and or trails. So there will at least be connectivity along the public roads. Now within the development, they may have some thoughts in terms of how they might provide some amenities around the hospital, but certainly all of the public roads in and around the site will have that pedestrian connectivity as required by our ordinance.
Great. Any other questions from the commission for Ben? Would the applicant care to make any comments?
Hi, I'm Kevin Scholes, VP of Asset Strategy for Parkview Health. Appreciate the opportunity to present tonight. We're excited about investing in the community, excited about bringing our healthcare services. What we intend to bring is full-service hospital with inpatient medical, surgical, and specialty care, along with medical office building with multiple physician specialties. So we're excited about bringing that here. And to your question, typically we'll exceed any sort of local codes when it comes to trails, specifically around the hospital. We like to have that similar to you. We want to have that walkability. We want to have that kind of outdoor space for employees and visitors. Even in our small physician office clinics, we implement that. So yes. A little bit about Parkview Health, if you don't know, we're a not-for-profit community-based health system. We have about 18,000 employees, and we serve about 1.3 million people in our current region. We're excited to expand to Lebanon and serve more people. We currently have 15 hospitals, so we're looking forward to adding a Lebanon hospital and adding to that total. And again, thanks for listening to our presentation, and we appreciate your consideration. Any questions for me?
Commission. Any questions for the applicant? Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So this item is an item that has a public hearing, so I will officially open the public hearing on docket 25-51. If you have any comments, please feel free to step to the microphone, identify yourself, try and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Seeing no rush to the microphone, I will then close the public hearing. So the public hearing for 25-51 was opened and closed. And with that, any further comments from the commission or questions for Ben?
Just one, just a size comparison. How many beds is with them, do you know?
60. I think I Googled it, 60.
60.
Google.
One of those beds, yeah, so I wasn't sure, but.
Awesome. With that, then I would entertain any motions.
I make a motion to approve the subject development plan contingent on the following God, I'm losing everything. My phone and my computer. So contingent on the following, but I know it's,
Would you like me to highlight those for you
Please.
because you can't
Thank
find
you.
them?
because I lost everything.
So again, first one is that the applicant addressed any remaining TAC comments. Second one is the applicant received formal drainage approval. And the third, the applicant provide a signage plan adhering to all UDO requirements prior to installation of signage.
And parking.
And
right?
yes, yeah, I think they're overparked by 8 spaces. So we'll just need to work with them to finalize the parking plan to make sure they meet those requirements as well.
Yeah, so parking would not be a variance, so.
Correct. Eat that, so.
Right. So the motion on the table is a motion to approve, given the staff recommendations with conditions 1, 2, and 3 is listed in our packet. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify with an aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. That motion does carry. Thank you guys very much. We're excited to see the development and the movement. Obviously have a lot of dirt moving out in that area already. So exciting things. Yeah, absolutely. Next up on our agenda, we have docket number 25-52. This is Lebanon Land Group, LLC. And I believe Ben has some context for us there.
Yeah, so this is the PUD ordinance for the Hickory Junction development to the west of what we were just talking about. And this has actually been massaged once before to make some updates to the PUD text to make it more favorable or make it more efficient in terms of development. And there's one more text amendment we have to make tonight, and it's one that I actually predicted we might need to make a while back. Related to the front setback requirements, and particularly as it relates to the outlots in this development. So if they want to pull up the screen, I will highlight a very quick example. This is the Leo's Market and Eatery that is looking to develop out in Hickory Junction. Right now, the front building setback requirement is a maximum of 20 feet, not a minimum, so a maximum of 20 feet. This is one of the outlots out in front of Hickory Junction. As you can see, there is a road on all 4 sides of the property, which means that there are 4 front lot lines and 4 front building setbacks. So where you have a maximum of a 20-foot setback, that means that the building needs to be 20 feet from every property line on this lot, which essentially means you'd fill up the lot with the building and not have any room for parking because the building has to be no more than 20 feet from every one of those 4 property lines. Which is not really feasible in any case, but certainly not on a traditional outlet like this. So you can see here, in fact, they've proposed a more traditional outlot development with vehicular access around the building, which is what we would typically see on an outlot such as this, where the building is, I think the setbacks range anywhere from 40 to 70 feet in order to accommodate that vehicular traffic around the building. So it was a standard that was in here that was really trying to promote buildings pushed out towards the street and really encourage pedestrian access, which on a traditional outlet like this really isn't feasible. We do have some internal lots where we're really going to try to promote that, but on these outlots, in this case, there's 4 front yards. You really can't put the building on all front yards. So what we're doing here is making a very minor modification of that front building maximum setback and actually just changing it to no minimum. So what that would do then is allow for a building like this that needs to have larger setbacks in order to accommodate that vehicular traffic. But on some of those other lots where they are able to be more pedestrian oriented, since there's no minimum, they can push the building out on the street. So this will allow the flexibility for both this type of traditional development on the outlots and then more pedestrian oriented developments on the internal lots that are closer to the field house. So that's the only amendment that we're making to this is to make an adjustment to that front maximum building setback to just make it no minimum to allow for the flexibility for these. And that's what we're presenting for you tonight. And I see that there's a question already that's just burning over there.
So we'll be voting on just these properties, not a change to the standard in its entirety?
So this is just making that minor modification in the text of the PUD ordinance for Hickory Junction. So
Okay.
this is not across
Just
the board on
confirming,
all, citywide.
And-
This is just the ordinance specific to Hickory Junction.
And when you say no minimum, there's, I can't think of the word now, the shared space, it's not going to be on the road. There has to be an amount because of sewer or anything or setback.
Yeah. So you've got the right of way associated with the
Right-of-way, yeah.
road. It'll take it behind the sidewalk. There might be easements for utilities in some locations. Certainly there are probably some fire safety and life safety requirements where you might have to have some space around the building. So yes, while it says no minimum, there are some practical things that might mean in some cases the building is further away than that.
Ultimately, the intent would be, from a State Road 39 perspective, is essentially to make a single line, visibility line.
Well, that was
towards 39,
originally the go.
right?
Actually, the originally the go was to push the building onto one of the internal roads and have all the parking on the State Road 39 side. But in terms of how this kind of has gotten configured, NDOT took some additional right of way on 39. They had to relocate one of their internal roads, get the depths right. And as they started looking at this with a lot of the users looking at the outlots, they're saying, hey, we need to have vehicular access around the building. That's just what everybody's looking for on this traditional outlet like that, which you can't really accommodate with the way that maximum building setback was. So this allows for, say, this Leo's development to happen on one of these outlots with larger setbacks. But then, like I said, there's a handful of lots interior where it does make sense to push the building up towards the road and put the parking behind it. And so we want to make sure that the standard is such that both of those things can happen.
But this doesn't pose like a safety risk being that close to the road, a busier road, having a building.
And where it would be is it would be closer to an interior road where it's only traffic associated with this development that it would be on. But no, the building will still be a significant distance off the edge of the road because the property line is probably in most cases at least 10 feet from the edge of pavement of the road.
Just to clarify, Ben, but going from maximum to minimum applies to all lots, not just the frontage lots, but the
Right.
interior lots. So there's nothing that says they couldn't build this Leo's interior or similar.
Correct. Yeah. So theoretically, they could build something like this with the building pushed out to one of the property lines. Obviously, they want vehicular access around the building, so they wouldn't. But yes, something like this could be built closer to the property line where it made sense.
No, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is they're not just restricting these frontage lots or they're not just asking to change the frontage lots from maximums to minimums.
It's all commercial
It's
lots.
all of them.
Yes.
So the interior lots that you were describing that could be more street forward, could be more pedestrian focused,
Yes.
they're not voluntarily committing to that. So you could build a Wawa behind the Leo's with the same footprint on an interior lot.
I mean, it's a bad example because we don't allow another gas station out here. But theoretically, yes, a commercial use on one of the interior lots would not have to be out on the street. But having no minimum allows for it to be out on the, right now, it couldn't actually be built on the street because there's it could have been 20 feet away, which would have been more like 30 feet away from the actual street.
Other questions for Ben?
So just a quick finalize, this is in terms of the process, since this is a text amendment to a PUD ordinance, a multi-step process. So the Plan Commission's role is to provide a recommendation to the council. And so that recommendation then gets forwarded to the council, will then have to adopt the amendment via an ordinance. So that's the other thing that I had sent out to you, is just a draft showing all the red line to the ordinance, really the primary updates that you can see in the ordinance. They're going to pull the screen up again, is just updating all of the ordinance numbers and all the dates associated with the approvals. And then really in terms of the actual substance of the PUD amendment, it's really just this, it's highlighted in yellow, changing it from a maximum setback to a minimum setback, and then from a maximum setback at 20 feet to no minimum.
Thank you, Ben. Does anyone from the applicant wish to speak? It's not required, I promise.
Hi, my name is Dan Connors with Card & Associates. Happy to answer any questions. I don't have anything else to add, but if anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer.
Questions from the commission for Dan?
How do you envision those interior lots kind of dovetailing into the conversation we've been having about that.
Yeah, so part of it, when we had to relocate the interior road, what it really did was, the primary driver for that was there's additional take by NDOT, which basically created our frontage parcels infeasible for any retail users. And obviously, retail users are the ones that are going to be most appropriate for the 39 frontage lots. The interior lots, as a result from that, have been substantially shrunk down. So there's one rectangular, I believe it's between 2 and 3 acre parcel lot. There's another triangular lot that is up against the pond. Otherwise, all the lots are now external to 39. And so that's really the impetus here. The internal lots are likely restaurants. That's what we're really targeting there, are different dining opportunities. They would, if anything else, be some level of low intensity office. But for the most part, all of those users would be looking for the exact same type of amenities that we're talking about. If you also look at the plan that we have, you could see there's there's landscaping buffers between the road, the sidewalk, and where these properties would start as well. So I believe that we have a good approach to all this. But yes, the goal is not to build anything right up to the side of it. We want this to be walkable. The intention is to have folks be able to easily get from the field house out to the 39 frontage lots for any sort of restaurant or retail opportunities out there, and then as well as the interior lots.
Any other questions or comments from the commission?
The only question I have is, could you not build 2 and 3 story parking garages?
Couldn't if we wanted to, yes. But we will not be building parking garages.
I
no.
know, but you get more parking that way and you don't have to lose space. You're going straight up.
Yeah, parking right now from a cost feasibility standpoint, just it is not possible for us.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the commission? Good deal. Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you.
So with that, again, this item is a public hearing item, so I will officially open the public hearing to docket 25-52. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to step to the microphone, identify yourself, limit to 3 minutes if possible. After a brief dramatic pause and seeing no movement to the microphone, I will close the public hearing. So the public hearing was officially opened and closed on docket 25-52. And unless there's any follow-up comments or items from the commission, I would entertain a motion. And just as a reminder, this would be a motion to recommend either positively or negatively to the Common Council.
I'll make a motion to forward the proposed amendments to the Hickory Junction PUD ordinance with a positive recommendation to the council.
So we have a motion to recommend a positive recommendation to the Common Council. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify with an aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. That motion does carry. Well, so far we're 2 for 2, Lori. We're making you do all the hard work tonight. Thank you very much, Dan, for visiting with us this evening. And that takes us to our last agenda item, and that is docket 25-55. These are text amendments to the UDO. And Ben, I think you have a bit of an overview for us here.
Yeah, so if you all will recall, we adopted a new or UDO February of last year. So we've been working with it for about 2 years now. And as you might imagine, when you do a wholesale update to Unified Development Ordinance, you will discover things as you're working with that don't work quite as well as you thought that they were going to. And so what we've essentially been doing over the last couple of years is as we run into something that's providing us hiccups that we didn't anticipate, we make a note of that. And once we got enough of those hiccups on the list, then we were just going to come in with a big bulk of them to the Plan Commission, get them all amended at the same time. So that is what we're doing tonight. Is we've got probably about a dozen or so text amendments to the UDO to clean things up that we discover weren't working quite the way we expected them to, or things that as we've been using them realize that there's some changes we need to make to allow it to be more effective and efficient for what we're doing. And then just in some cases, it's just some feedback we've gotten from folks that, hey, I think maybe there's a better way to do this. And so we've incorporated all those here into one large text amendment to several different chapters in the UDO. I will point out real quick first, and when I get to it, I'll make sure to highlight it specifically. There is one that I've been discussing with legal counsel, and it needs a little bit of massaging. And so there is one of them that we're actually going to remove from consideration tonight in Chapter 7, amendments to utility standards. We're going to pull that one out of the list so we can just spend a little bit more time reviewing that and make sure we've got the language exactly the way we need it. And so again, as I'm scrolling through these changes, I'll highlight that one. But again, for consideration tonight, we'll be removing that one from consideration for the Plan Commission. Similar to the last one, process is very similar. Plan Commission's role is to review these recommended changes and provide a recommendation on those amendments to the council. And then the council would adopt all these changes via ordinance. So we will start in Chapter 2. And this is our zoning districts chapter. So the first thing is actually some changes to the setback and height requirements of our residential zoning districts. One thing and one comment we've heard over and over again is that the 20-foot garage setback does not allow for parking of what most people drive anymore without them blocking the sidewalk. So you will notice, though, that we have a building front yard setback and then a front load garage setback. So what we've actually done with this is reduced the front building setback, but increased the front load garage setback. So for example, if somebody had a house product where the garage was set back significantly from the house, we want to encourage them to be able to push that pretty part of the house forward towards the street, as long as the garage is set back at least 25 feet to allow for cars to be able to park in the driveway. So that's what this does. You'll see that top line, if they want to pull up the screen here, that top line, the minimum front yard setback, that's the building setback. So you can see R1, R2 through R6, it goes from 30 and it kind of gradually goes down till you have a 10-foot setback in the R5 and R6. But then that minimum front load garage setback is 30 feet in R1 and then 25 feet in every other zoning district. So again, just trying to make sure that we've got a driveway pad that's big enough for two cars to park without blocking that sidewalk, which has become an issue in some neighborhoods. Again, with some of the narrower lots, there's also not a lot of on-street parking available. So that garage has to be long enough to park cars without blocking the sidewalk, making people walk around the cars in the street, which is not safe. So that's why we wanted to do that. The only other thing that we had proposed is increasing the building height in the R6, which is where you would potentially see a more traditional apartment development. So going from 50 to 60 allows for a 4-story building that might have some pitched roofs on it. So just making sure we can get up to that 4 stories within the standard zoning district. So those are the changes. Any questions on those before I move on?
If we do go to 4-story, do we have an elevator requirement within our
Building code dictates that. So yeah, I think once you get to 4 stories, there is an elevator required, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Thank you.
So in the thoroughfare overlay district, if you recall, we have a series of prohibited uses within the overlay district area. And we had recognized once we adopted this essentially carried over from the last UDO, and what we recognized that the terms and the uses in this list didn't match up with terms and uses in the new UDO. And so we wanted to just make sure that the terminology we were using within this list matched up with the definition we had in the new UDO. So that's primarily what we're doing here. So it says before we had auto repair, but in the new UDO, it's automotive service heavy. So again, we made that change. And so these all are essentially just cleaning up the terminology so it matches the associated definition. And then there were a series of additional uses that we decided to add that were new terms in the new UDO that we felt like in a thoroughfare overlay district would not be appropriate, like automobile parts recycling businesses, recycling plants, scrap processors, the things we would not really want within that overlay district. So that's what this does, is clean up that terminology to make sure it matches with definitions, so we can be clear with people what uses are permitted and prohibited in the overlay district. So next is in Chapter 3 in the permitted uses. And this has actually come up because Lebanon Utilities has got a number of projects going on right now. And so when we started looking at where major impact utilities and minor impact utilities were permitted, it seemed like the places where they were permitted versus conditional were flipped from what I would have expected. So like a major impact utility would be like a treatment plant, something where you would want it to be mostly conditional in zoning districts, and it was actually permitted in a lot of places, which kind of surprised me. So so we changed them to conditional in our commercial and industrial zoning district, or conditional in those districts. And then the minor impacts is more like a water tower or a ground storage tank, things like that, which are much smaller impact on surrounding areas. And felt like, say, for example, in commercial industrial zoning districts, it made more sense for those to be permitted rather than conditional. So we basically swapped them so that make it easier for what would be a minor impact utility project to be able to move forward. And so that's what this does, is just cleans that up and makes those major impacts conditional rather than permitted, and then the opposite for the minor impact projects. And then the other thing as we were discussing, we cleaned up the definition of minor impact to make sure it included those above and groundwater storage tanks. It was one that we had assumed we've always interpreted to be in that definition. We went ahead just to include it to make sure it was clear. Couple other places as we've gotten inquiries about certain types of uses, and in terms of automobile services light, oil changes wasn't included in that definition, and it's something that we had always assumed and inferred that it did fit in that use category. So again, we just added oil changes to clear that up, make sure that people understood that. And then we actually found some places where a certain type of sales, like boats, was actually included in two different definitions. And then also utility trailers and recreational vehicles. We felt like it fit best in this auto, light truck sales or rentals rather than the heavy equipment sales. And so we made sure to include that in that definition. Then you'll find down here's where we deleted recreational vehicle and boats, because boats was included in two different places. So again, including in one and making sure that it wasn't in another, so there was no confusion about which definition it fell under. Again, just a simple one. We've been asked about landscape contractors, and it wasn't specifically identified in the definition, so we included in the definition of general contractors along with other similar contracting uses. This is one that came up as a couple of solar projects related to specific uses like Eli Lilly, and we wanted to clean up. So what the standard said before was that solar projects were not considered impervious surface in terms of drainage requirements if they included the vegetation. That actually conflicts with our stormwater ordinance, which actually, depending on how the solar panels are spaced apart, if they're fairly close together, they are considered impervious surface, and there's a separation that allows them to then be considered impervious. So what we instead said is that they're just required, their solar system shall meet the requirements of the stormwater ordinance, just to make sure that we weren't in conflict with another drainage standard that we already had in place. And so that way, if the stormwater ordinance ever changed, we just have a general reference to that in here, so we don't have to change it multiple places. Any questions on those changes before I move on to chapter 4? All right, in the LEAP district, this is a very simple one. We had recognized that data centers were permitted across the board within the LEAP district. And if you recall, we have actually now 4 different sub-districts in the LEAP district. We have the mega site district, which in here is the acronym IM. The advanced manufacturing, which is IA, and mixed use, and it was permitted in all 3 of those. And really, as it's started to play out, we recognize that really the location of the sub-district where we want them to be permitted is in the mega site sub-district, which is where the Meta project is located, and really didn't feel like it was something that should be permitted within those other sub-districts where we're not wanting those big, intense uses like that. So this essentially, you'll see it's just eliminating that use as permitted in the advanced manufacturing and the mixed use sub-districts, keeping it as being permitted in the mega site sub-district. If you recall, late last year, we made some changes to the concept plan or the land use plan for the LEAP district. There's an area south of State Road 32 that's in a hybrid district that could either be mega site or advanced manufacturing, depending on what's proposed there, and allow staff the ability to determine which sub-district would be most appropriate. So there is the potential there could be another mega site depending on what's proposed, or that could also go advanced manufacturing. But in essence, really the rest of the LEAP district at this point is advanced manufacturing and mixed use sub-district areas, except for that hybrid district. On to chapter 5, this will be one that Kevin and I kind of scratched our heads about how it was set up. The site visibility triangle. In the new UDO, the distance for the site visibility triangle was from the intersection of the center lines of the roads as opposed to the right-of-way lines. In some cases, the actual right-of-way distance was greater than the site visibility triangle distance, so the site visibility triangle didn't actually extend onto private property. So you really weren't applying it anywhere in that case. So what we did is just clean that up a little bit. Actually, the distances were decreased, but that's because they're measured from the intersection of the rights-of-way lines of on the property. So where it was, say, like an R2 before it was 200 feet from the center line, now it's just 50 feet from the right-of-way line. But it cleans it up because, like I said, we literally had a project where the driveway intersected with a public road and the site visibility triangle was basically still in the pavement of the road and didn't actually provide any clearance on the private property, which is really. So we've cleaned this up and just made sure that the measurements were the right so line right on the center lines. So one quick one here that highlighted paragraph in yellow, we had noticed that there wasn't. So this essentially just adds a minimum parking setback from front, sides, and rear property lines. So that's essentially what that first paragraph does. The second one is just a cleanup. We noticed that the chart, the aisle widths were swapped from the actual diagrams below. So we fixed that to make sure that the chart and the diagrams, the widths matched up. So again, just a typo cleanup. And then on signage, this is actually one where we had two different locations in the sign ordinance section where there were wall signs on buildings adjacent to residential districts. There was a standard, but they were different standards depending on which section of you were looking at. So we eliminated the one we didn't want and kept the other one. So that's essentially all that's doing is just eliminating one of those locations from the ordinance so that the other one would just apply and we wouldn't have. It said the sign permit is not required for a window sign, but we actually do require permits for signs in the windows. So we eliminated the word not.
Is there a minimum sign size that requires a permit?
I don't know that it does have a minimum size where it's required, but it does have to be attached to the window. So things that like are hanging don't, but yeah, I mean,
My thought is, so like the Dora signs, Dora was just recently passed.
So if it's not
Would be a-
advertising something specific to the business, it's not considered a sign. So that
Okay.
those would be exempt.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the clarifier. Perfect.
Again, this is one where we had a sign standard for canopy signs in two different locations that conflicted. So we eliminated the conflicting standard from this section here. On to chapter 7. This is the one that I said that we're going to remove from consideration. So this in section 731, there was a couple things we were looking at here. We're removing that one from consideration tonight here. So chapter 731 is not in consideration. And then process and permits. We do require permits for short-term rentals like Airbnbs. We just didn't have a definition of what a short-term rental was. So there is kind of an industry standard definition. So we looked that up and made sure we copy that in here. Basically anything where it's rented for periods of less than 30 consecutive days is typically considered a short-term rental. So we've got the definition there to make sure we can apply that consistently across the board. And that finishes up the text amendments. Again, like I mentioned, this is similar to the last one. This is a recommendation from the Planning Commission tonight, forwarded to the council for consideration for adoption via ordinance. Again, happy to any questions if there are any on these.
Thank you, Ben. Any questions from the commission?
When you're talking about the triangle and the visibility, and it said downtown obviously is not included because there's no visibility
The building
around
would
some
be
of
in
those
the way
buildings.
on all those, yeah.
Yeah, but if there were a situation where there's new construction, it still wouldn't include the district, or?
Yeah, the downtown area is exempt, so new construction would be too.
Other questions? And you look like you have a question.
It's a short-term rental permit. It's not what's actually there. It's something might still just be missing. I don't know. It's, it seemed vague. It's actually not on this page. I think it's on the next page. It's not even here in the documents. It's the part about when there's a violation. What's the first violation? Can the first violation actually be the fact that you don't even apply for the permit when you should have? Because that's really not in there. 'Cause I know we
No,
had that
and
out there.
unless or until they're aware they're in violation, there isn't a violation. So really, the first violation is when we notify them of an issue. And that's how we apply it on any ordinance violation across the board in the ordinance. So I think the question is if they have operated as an Airbnb for 3 months but weren't aware they needed a permit, are those multiple violations? And we would say no, it is not, because they weren't aware there was a violation. It's not until we notify them of a violation that they need to correct. That's the first
That's
time.
a violation for each property. Because I know the one I'm thinking of is the one out there that has 20 plus all at once going, and each permit is for each property, correct?
It's specific to a property.
So we give them one.
So each property is its own individual violation.
Right.
So that's how,
Even though it's the
we
same
have
owner.
landlords that own 50 properties in Lebanon. We don't consider each property in combination with the others. Each property is its own violation.
So are you asking if there's,
I mean, if there was
like,
one
if you
owner that
violate, what happens? Is that what you're asking?
Say it again.
Like if they violate, what's the consequence? Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm not asking the consequence yet. I'm asking just that first violation sometimes. And I'm going, if there's a corporate one out there, which they are, and they have 20 plus properties out there, each one's considered a separate violation. I would disagree with that. I'm
But
sorry.
it's unique to the property. So again, I can't say that they've been in violation 20 times because there's 20. I mean, they are in violation, but it's the first time violation for each unique property.
Yeah, the question I have though, if I happen to own 20 properties, if I know the one, the other 19 should have to fit it right there too. All at the same time.
But what I would say is until we've notified them of a violation, that's when the clock starts, at least from our consideration, is once we've notified them of violation.
How many of them are in
That's
violation?
essentially due process.
How many are in violation before they ever start?
I wouldn't know until we've identified that a violation
I
exists
don't
and
think you can
notified
be in
them.
violation if you haven't started yet.
I mean, when they already have the property and we change the rule, then what?
I mean, if we change the rule and then we're notified that a violation exists, we would notify them of a change in rule.
Yeah, they get a notification about what the new rule is.
Yeah.
And you have this time when.
Correct.
And if they don't make it by that time, then the violation comes along, right?
Yes.
That's what I wanted to make sure. Is that what you were asking also?
What
Yeah,
he's
kind of.
what he's asking is if somebody has 20 different properties, he wants them to be considered as though they're one property essentially, and they're in violation 20 times. And in this case, they should not be allowed to run a short-term rental. But
No, it shouldn't be
each
allowed.
that's what would happen based on what that standard is in there. If we consider them as essentially one owner, but it's goes by property, not by owner.
I'm fine if you wanted to say it's by property, then it'd be like if it's your first violation, you get time to change it. But I'm like, yeah.
It's standard practice if somebody reports a violation to look up like properties that are owned. I mean, how would you know if somebody's doing an Airbnb out of it without somebody reporting? Or unless like no one's looking, right, to see
Yeah,
it.
well,
So
and the hard part is if you recall on Airbnb, you don't know the address until after you've rented it. So it's really hard for us to actually verify location unless we just recognize the property in pictures. So that's our biggest challenge right now enforcing this, is not knowing. Certainly the one that we've looked at, it was clear where that was located and it was easy for us to figure out who the owner was. But some of these, it may not be easy for us unless we've actually physically rented the property to know the exact location.
But do we have a requirement that they come to us to tell us before they're doing it?
Yeah, I mean, certainly if they're aware of the requirement for a permit, they're required to come in and submit for a permit. The permit requirement is relatively new. It's basically as of last year. So we have people that weren't aware that they needed a permit for that. So
are we going to notify them?
Yes,
all
yes.
the
If we
owners?
discover, we notify them. And actually one of them that we did notify, within 3 days, they had submitted for the permit and had it issued.
That's the only way. Otherwise, you won't ever know if they don't.
Right. That's why we wait until they've been notified of the rule, because in some cases they're not aware the rule exists before that.
A lot of them don't want to know, but at least they know they got notified, then that's out the door.
Mhm.
That's what I'm after.
This is the same principle if someone puts a shed somewhere or a fence somewhere and doesn't know what the setback is and didn't know they needed a permit for it. Like, basically, if it's an issue, then it can be reported. And if the shed's not in the right spot, you could ask or say that it would need to be moved, or if it's the wrong size and doesn't have a foundation. So, but I'd say the average person isn't necessarily aware that that's typical steps. So you're giving them an awareness of that to have time to get the permit.
Yeah.
To do it correctly.
The ordinance in our standard practice has always been to notify somebody that a violation exists and give them 7 business days to correct that violation, or contact us to work out a schedule to get it addressed.
It's 7 days.
Yeah, 7 business days.
I'm happier hearing that.
Yeah.
There's no violation that we issue citations for immediately.
Yeah,
Our standard of care, our standard process, our due process is to issue a letter that it appears you're in violation and you need to address this issue.
The only time where we might issue a citation if it's a repeat offender and it's the same offense. And we have plenty of those too.
And I think that's different, right?
Yeah.
But
if it's
someone
a-
who owes 20 buildings, if we report that you have a fence violation, we're not going to cite you 20 times. We cite you for one. Yes, you're on notice that you should probably look at your other properties, but we're not citing them simultaneously.
I would just say in most cases we are citing them, each one specifically. That way we're on record as having notified them that a violation exists on that specific
No,
property.
I guess that's, sorry, I was
I
not
guess if you
spoke
cover
correctly.
like 20 separate properties that aren't all the same, kind of like what's out there, they're like all the same and everything's interconnected.
You own 20 rental houses across the city and we find you're in violation at one of them.
Well, and that's all you're going to notify for.
That's
right?
all, that's what we notify
Correct.
for.
Yeah. Yeah.
That should tell them to look at their own without somebody telling them.
Right.
Their fault. They own it. That's the way I look at it.
But this is not like criminal law where ignorance of the law is not an excuse. This
Well,
is,
it's the neighborhood problem, I can
Yeah.
tell you that.
I'm just saying it, the law looks at planning statute different than it does criminal law.
I'm satisfied at the moment.
Good deal. Any other questions, comments? Perfect. So again, for a final time this evening, docket 25-55 is a public hearing item. We will officially open the public hearing. If you have any comments, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and limit your comments to 3 minutes if possible. Seeing no sudden movements to the microphone, I will officially close the public hearing. So the public hearing on docket 25-55 was both opened and closed officially. And with that, I would entertain any motions. And again, we're looking for a recommendation to the Common Council.
I will motion that we approve 25-55 and recommend that we forward the proposed text amendments to the Common Council with a favorable recommendation.
We have
To remove the amendment related to chapter 731.
I would like to remove Cool.
As noted by Ben.
As noted by Ben. Thank you.
So the motion on the table then is to forward with a favorable recommendation, including removing the consideration of 7-31. So that's the motion on the table. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. That motion does carry. All right, folks, we did some heavy lifting this evening. We got those 3 items taken care of. We've got the agenda set for 2026. Any other items to come before this commission before we entertain a motion to adjourn? Seeing none. Any motions to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second from Kevin. All those in favor, please signify with an aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. We are now adjourned. Thank you very much for joining.